There are 3 problems every buyer I work with has in the real estate process. Number 1, how much do they qualify for and how much is their monthly payment really going to be? Number 2, what's the next step look like in the real estate process? And number 3, how much should they really offer on their home so they're not overpaying on that next home purchase? We're going to dive in today, answer all those questions and more in our Buyer Masterclass as we give you an insider page of the playbook of what it takes to buy a home in today's market and be successful. To do this, we're going to cover 3 main things. Number 1, I'm going to give you 7 secrets every buyer should know when buying their next home. Number 2, what are the 2 tools to better understand pricing insights and how to make your next offer successful? And number 3, what are 3 outs or protection mechanisms every buyer knows or every buyer should know that they have when they buy their next home? Before we dive into the 7 secrets, let's understand a baseline of this up here. Real estate is a game of contracts and power players. Contracts protect you, power players make things happen for you. Real estate's governed by 3 major agreements. First, a listing agreement, which is an agreement between a seller and a real estate agent. Second is a buyer agreement, which is an agreement between a buyer and a buyer agent. And finally, the purchase agreement, which oversees both sides of the transaction. Compensations are sent accordingly to each party depending upon who is represented and protected in the agreement. So to get started here, what are some numbers that we should know? First of all, 68. 68% of Americans are homeowners in the first quarter of 2023. 28%. In the current market today, 28% of home buyers are paying at or over asking price, and 26. Only 26% of home buyers today are first-time home buyers. How do we increase this number and make it so more Americans can be homeowners? Those are things we're going to find out through this masterclass. I love the quote, "A house is made of bricks and beams, but a home is made of hopes and dreams." Our goal today is give you an unfair advantage to put you in the best position possible to get into your next home. So when you're looking at your next home, you should always ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it the home you want? Is it the price you want? And are they the terms you want? If you can answer these 3 questions, then we can figure out how to get you into your next home. So the first secret in the 7 real estate secrets is understand the 3 major agreements and who represents you and how they're compensated through the process and how they'll protect you and enable you to achieve your goals. To know and then understand secret number 2, we first have to answer this key question. Who is going to sell us the home that we want to buy? Understanding the seller's universe can change the scope you have on what a home purchase can look like. Often people say there's a lack of inventory. There's no homes on the market that fit what I want to buy. Well, if you simply look at the MLS, you're exactly right. There's not enough homes to meet the demand of buyers out there. So what am I talking to? Let's dive in and check it out. Right here, we see that only 1% of our buyers are actually, of our sellers are actually active sellers on the MLS. That's of all the home properties that are available or even built and on the market. Another massive chunk of them are passive sellers, and the last chunk of them are not even considering right now to sell their home. So understanding the buyer universe, let's look at this diagram over here. You have 2 key categories, passive sellers and active sellers. That fits right into our category over here of active sellers and then everybody else, okay? This then takes us to other key categories on the XY axis or graph, people we know and people we don't know. If we can understand this system and this process, our options will open up. When you don't know your options, you don't have any options. So looking here, passive sellers, those are people that maybe, so let's go to active sellers because that's what we're most familiar with. Active sellers are ones that are on the MLS, currently actively marketed for sale online, and then homes that might be coming soon. Those are your active sellers and people you know, and then also people you don't know, which also could include things on the MLS and for sale by owners. So having a well-connected agent can be a game changer for you because that agent might know other agents who are putting properties on the MLS that are coming soon. They might be connected to builders who are going to be finishing their product and they want to get it marketed and activated and given to a buyer as soon as possible. They might also be connected to people that flip homes. So in my case, I know all those different buying parties, whether it's home builders, other agents, or investors that are actively flipping homes in a neighborhood that you're interested in as a buyer. They can help you get to the finish line. The second group we're going to look at over here is passive sellers. Passive sellers, people we know. These could be pocket listings or listings of people that maybe I went to a listing appointment and I have a seller that wants to sell their house when the terms and the time is right. But they're not actively ready to sell their house now. So I might be going to a buyer appointment, meet with a buyer and find out that they want to live in the exact city where I just met with a seller. That would be a classic example of a pocket listing where I can marry two parties together and do it within the terms and the timelines that work on both ends of the spectrum. The second thing could be conditional, and that fits right into what I just talked about, but you might know people who are willing to sell, but only if the terms and the timelines are correct. The second part of it is passive sellers are individuals that could be expired listings. That means people that once were active, but no longer actively are engaged in selling their house because they didn't get the terms or the price they want. But as an agent, I can get a list to every single person that's an expired listing. I can give them a call, find out exactly what they're looking for in their ideal buyer, and I can match that party up with the seller. Finally, also inquiries. Single day, I receive inquiries from individuals looking to find out what is my home worth today and what could it sell for tomorrow. So I'm constantly having a flow of people or sellers that want to find a perfect match with a potential buyer. The second secret of the home buying process is understanding the seller's universe. So up here, number 2 is understand your options. You have more options than simply what you see online when you take into consideration the entire universe of sellers. Now, 100% of the market could be made available to you. To understand secret number 3, it's paramount to recognize that to be successful, you have to have great systems powered by humans. What do I mean about that? Well, it kind of takes us back to step number 3, or tip number 3, where we learned about the seller's universe. The top 95% of agents, you know what they do? They simply show and sell, meaning they walk you into a property and then they help you go under a contract. Now, that's a great way to do it, but that is not the only way to do real estate. 95% of agents tend to do that. The next 5% of agents will go the extra mile. They're going to check out expired listings. They're going to check out for sale by owners. They're going to do all those unknowns with active listings. But if you want to be truly successful, you have to hit the 1%, and the top 1%, they hit those for sale by owners. They do the going and the showing, but they also will check in the sphere or their universe of people that are passive sellers. Remember that biggest group out there of sellers that don't know if they really want to sell or not, or even approach the idea until they identify, and you help them identify the perfect buyer for their home. So what we learn is having a game plan is better than simply search and show. So if you want to be truly effective, tip number 3 is having a game plan is better than search and show. Secret number 4 is all about understanding you as a buyer. There's 2 key diagrams I want to look at here. Number 1, it's the pyramid of scale. So what is most important to you in the home buying process? Number 1, what is the number reason why you are moving and why now? Okay, so understanding that number 1 reason will drive every decision you're making in the home buying process. Number 2, get really, really clear on your non-negotiables. And that includes things you want and also things you don't want. So for example, you may get into this non-negotiable state and it is non-negotiable that you have a master suite because you're tired of sharing bathrooms with your kids. But on the same token, you might have a non-negotiable that says, I will not back up to a busy road. Bam. Understand your non-negotiables will help to funnel down the decision-making process. Next thing to get really clear on are what are those things that are just nice to have. Hey, it's nice to have an updated house, or it's nice to have a kitchen with granite countertops. But understanding those things can be changed or updated through the process is good to know. So what are your nice to haves? Number 4, what is the timing associated with your home? Do you have flexibility, or do you need to be in a home by a certain date or time? As a buyer, if you really and truly want to get serious on jumping from the ledge of looking at homes to actually going into homes and making offers on home, set yourself a timeline. I find in almost every instance, if we have buyers with a specific timeline, they're more willing to get really serious on these other 3 categories we talked about. And finally, what's the purchase price? And those really include 2 different parts of the categories. That's money you have to bring to the table in the form of a down payment. How much cash do I have or do I need to close? And then number 2 on this side is going to be the idea of what's my monthly payment look like. If you can understand those 2 things as a buyer, then you're in a much better capacity to not overpay for a home and get into the home that fits you and your family's needs. The second diagram to understand, once you're super clear on what you want, the second diagram is the catalyst home that I show over here on this side. So what is a catalyst home? Well, when I take buyers out, I find it's most effective to go look at a chunk of homes at one time. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll schedule 9 homes together to go see in one single day. So we'll spend 3 hours together, go see 3 to 4 homes an hour. But pretty quickly, after we go see 3, 4, or even 5 homes, they begin comparing all the other homes they see to one specific home. In other words, benchmark or catalyst home that will move them forward to the next place. So after seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes, now home number 4 kind of got the sparkle in their eyes and said, hey, that's a house I really actually like. And then after we go see the other homes, everything compares itself to the catalyst home or benchmark number 4. So if you want to be effective in your home search and you don't want to become the eternal searcher, but rather find the home that fits your needs and your wants, create a system where you create a benchmark home and you base everything else off of that benchmark home. And then once these things line up, you know that you have found the right home. So secret number 4 is the idea that good processes drive good results. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, once said, you don't rise to the level of your goals, but rather you fall to the levels of your processes and systems. To understand secret number 5, it's critical you get into the nitty-gritty of your finances. Financing a home really breaks down into 3 key categories: economics, financing, and certainty. Once you get these 3 things super clear, you're going to have more impact and effectiveness in buying your next home. So what do I mean by economics? Simply, how are you going to finance your home? Are you going to pay cash, or are you going to do a combination of cash with a down payment and then a mortgage? Traditional mortgage could be VA, could be FHA, could be USDA, could be conventional. But either way, how are you going to finance your home? Get super clear on that point. Number 2 is financing. Is how much money do you need to have down to put on the property, and how much does your monthly payment actually cost you? If you're not super clear on those 2 things, then you're going to be searching and looking for a long time because you're never going to have the confidence to step off of the ledge and get into the home buying market. Number 3 is certainty. There's a saying that saying delaying kills deals. So delay kills deals. If you are hesitant and unable to move forward quickly, you're going to be surpassed or usurped by somebody else who's going to pass you in line to get into that perfect home. So how do you make sure you're ready to go? Well, number 1, get a pre-qual. Every buyer I work with, before we even look or start a search for their next home, I ask them to get pre-qualified with one of our verified lenders. After that, after they get pre-qualified, I ask them to take one step further. And that's something called a pre-approval. So what's the difference in a pre-qualification versus a pre-approval? Well, a pre-qualification, they simply ask you some questions. How much do you make? How much debt do you have? And can I run your credit? They then run your credit and they give you a pre-qualification that says you are approved up to a certain amount of money to buy a home. When they pre-approve you, they actually verify and vet the information you told them. I'm going to grab your W-2s. I'm going to get your pay stubs. I'm going to get a copy of your bank statements. I'm going to additionally, obviously, pull your credit and then verify any debt that you have. But just think of it this way. As a seller, if I had to choose between two buyers, one that had a pre-qualification and one that had a verified pre-approval and already had gone through desktop underwriting, which one would you be more inclined to look seriously at? Do you get my point? If you're going to have success, secret number 5 is critical. Get a top-notch mortgage professional to take care of you through the purchase process and financing your home. Have you ever heard the advice that you date the rate, but you marry the home? Bad advice, and let me tell you why. We want to create a customized payment plan that makes sense and works for you. Sure, you could absolutely refinance down the road, and dating the rate simply gets you into a home today, which is fabulous. But understanding your entire financial situation can make sure you're comfortable and confident with your home purchase from day one. So for example, the par rate today might be 7%. But if you are a good buyer that has great credit and you want to buy down the rate just a little bit more to 6.5% or 6.25, then talk to your lending professional or mortgage professional about how much it would cost to buy down the rate and get your payment just a little bit lower. On average, right now in this market, we find that every $10,000 is roughly $75 difference in payment. So if you're payment conscientious, don't just date the rate, but rather find a customized solution that works for you, and with your real estate agent, identify how much you guys need to negotiate in closing costs to make a home purchase work for you. Okay. At the beginning of this video, we talked about not wanting to overpay for a home as a buyer. To understand how to get the best price on the property you're offering on, it's important to understand the 3 key pricing strategies every seller could use when they sell their home. Number 1 is aspirational pricing. Number 2 is perceived market value pricing. And number 3 is event pricing. So what am I really talking about when I talk about those 3 pricing strategies? Aspirational pricing strategy is simply where a seller might overprice their home to leave room for negotiation. So for example, they say, I'm going to price my home at $1.2 million. I really would like to sell it for $1 million, but I'll leave a couple $100,000 wiggle room in between. That's aspirational pricing. While any seller can use aspirational pricing, you often see it on maybe more expensive properties, maybe properties that have celebrities or things like that in that kind of nature. But aspirational pricing is where you build in wiggle room to get down or negotiate to the price you're actually comfortable with as a seller and or a buyer. Number 2 is perceived market value pricing. Recognize this as agents and sellers, we don't set the pricing. Rather, the market dictates what your home is actually worth. So when you use perceived market value pricing, you're essentially creating a structure of comparable properties that support your home sale. So if, for example, I went into a neighborhood and I found that not just in a neighborhood, but within a neighborhood, similar homes that are similar in size and year built, if I can identify those couple key things and they sold within the last 6 to 3 months, then those are comparable properties that would support my value as a seller based on raw data points. And the final one is event pricing. That's saying, hey, we're going to mark our home under market value to create and generate more interest and more offers, and in some cases, extend well above and beyond what you could get with the other 2 pricing strategies. So why is this important to you as a buyer? Well, if you can understand and identify which pricing strategy that the seller may be using when they sell their home, just imagine how much better you can create an offer to fit exactly what they want while still getting exactly what you want as a buyer. And what is that? Well, it's the best price with the best terms for you and for the seller. With secret number 6, also as a buyer, if you can understand the market and what supply and demand or inventory means to you, it's going to be critical to be more successful. There's really 3 key things to understand when you're looking at a market. Number 1, how many months of inventory is currently on the market? If it's 4 to 6 months, that typically is a balanced market, meaning it's both a buyer's and a seller's market. Both sides are giving and both sides are receiving or taking in the process of buying and selling a home. If it's less than 4 to 6 months, it is a seller's market, whereas a buyer, you don't get the concessions or the concessions from the seller that you would love to have. But if it's more than 6 months, it's a buyer's market, and you should go all out trying to get closing costs and whatever other concessions you can get from the seller. When you understand the pricing strategies we discussed earlier, then you can understand the secret number 6, which is support and defend the appraisal. If you can understand how appraisals work on homes and how you can strategize pricing within that, then you will never go wrong as a buyer. The last secret that every buyer needs to know before you buy your next home. Understanding that contracts are complex is part of the process. There's the total purchase price. You have the terms, timelines, concessions. You have commissions. Who am I paying, and how does that money get used to represent me as a buyer? And what services can I receive through the process of a home purchase to make sure it protects me? Lenders, title, escrow, etc. What I find in every single home I've purchased, now obviously I am a real estate agent now, but in every single home I purchased before I became a real estate agent, having an agent on my side was critical to helping me achieve success in the purchase process. I often saw my real estate agent as the hub on the wheel, and there were multiple spokes that went out to build out the rest of the wheel. And if I had the right agent who knew how to talk to sellers, who knew how to negotiate, and who could help me identify and find properties that not only were on the MLS but also beyond the MLS, then I knew I had an agent that I could trust to help take me to the finish line in the selling process. So understand that contracts are super complex, can be a great benefit to you as a buyer to better understand and get the best deal possible in your home purchase process. So to recap, what are we really talking about here? Well, let's run through. We had 7 secrets that we agreed every buyer must know to be successful in today's market. Number 1, understand the 3 major agreements. Number 2, understand the seller's universe. And once you understand that, your options are limitless. Number 3, having a plan is better than simply search and show. Number 4, good processes drive good results. Number 5, get a top-notch mortgage lender. Number 6, support and defend the appraisal. And number 7, contracts are complex. That then leads us to 2 tools. I told you I'd give you 2 pricing tools that can help you to make sure you never overpay on your next home. Number 1, understand how to price their home and the strategies they use to get top dollar, and how you can use those strategies in the inverse to get the home you want at the price you want with the terms you want. Number 2 with that is understand how inventory affects the market, supply and demand. And then what are your 3 outs? Finally, I told you I'd leave you with one last goodie to make sure you were protected as a buyer. What are your 3 outs, or the contractual places that protect you through the purchase process? Number 1, it's the buyer's due diligence. Recognize you have the chance to do an inspection on the home and make sure that it truly is the right home for you. And if during that due diligence period you cancel for whatever reason it might be, whether it's inspection or simply you no longer want to purchase a home, you should be able to get out contractually and get your earnest money back. Now, every market, every state does contract laws a little bit different, but in Utah, that's your out as a buyer. Number 2, appraisal. If the appraisal doesn't come in at the value you are under contract at, you have an out as a buyer if you cannot come to an agreement with the seller on what the new price should be of that home. And number 3, your final out as a buyer is financing. If financing fell apart for whatever reason, the terms of the loan are no longer acceptable. Maybe you didn't get the rate locked in soon enough like you thought you would, or maybe you lost your job. But if any one of those 3 things happened, you have an out and are protected as a buyer. So what does this all mean for you? It means you can knowledgeably and confidently move forward on your next home purchase. If you're in the market and interested in working with someone who can help take you to that next place, my info is below, and let's get connected. I want to give a shout out to my man, Sharon Srivatsa, the CEO and president of Real Broker, who helped to give me the insights and understanding to the 7 secrets, the tools, and the 3 outs that every buyer should know.